Ladies and gentlemen, it is officially time to begin worrying about the Phillies bullpen. This was a unit that there were questions about coming into the season, and the early concerns are proven to be true, coming off back to back games with incredibly embarrassing and concerning performances from the group. Jordan Romano headlines things, allowing 6 runs in the ninth inning of a game that should have been a blowout victory by the Phillies, and then the day after, Jesus Luzardo walks off the mound after 7 innings, 1 run allowed, a 5-1 lead just for the Phillies to fall in extra innings. This is an issue that we knew could be a problem coming into the season, and boy, are we seeing the full effects of this. Do want to dive into exactly what the deal is with this bullpen, sort through a couple of these names, and why I think the time for Dave Dombrowski to act may be a little bit more pressing than any of us expected to be the case. Gonna dive into each of those things, but before I do want to remind you guys to make sure you are hitting that subscribe button to us here on Phillies Digest. At this point in time, 66.1% of you guys viewing these videos have not subscribed just yet. We are on the full swing of the Philly season and want as many of you as possible on board. So make sure you're hitting that button. It helps us out here. And let's get into the topic of today. So first I want to start off with just pointing at the depth chart overall. We knew there were concerns with this Phillies overall bullpen unit coming into the season. Jose Alvarado, a guy that we know what we got in him. I do trust him, but not a guy that I lock in as like he has his sporadic stretches as well. Jordan Romano, certainly a guy who is a risk there, and we are seeing this blow up in full force. Matt Strom, awesome, and by the way, not worried about the blown save yesterday. He warmed up twice during the game, threw 20 pitches the day before, and he didn't even get hit hard. It was a bunt single that moved the run over to third. It was a ball that kind of leaked through to the infield that scored that, and a sacrifice fly that was his other run. So not worried about Strom in the slightest. Orion Kirkring, that 3-run home run that he led up to ultimately tie the game there is, I believe, what it was. Unfortunate and not good to see. I haven't loved what I've seen from Orion, and to be straight up, like, it was a bad pitch yesterday. He threw a meatball over the plate and got punished for it. With that said, we still know the track record. Still not a guy that I'm smashing the panic button on him specifically, but I will get into why I think these problems are all related. Joe Ross, another guy that this Phillies team took a chance on and aren't really reaping the benefits. There is Jose Ruiz, who I think overall has been okay. Tanner Banks, who I think is what he is at this point. He's an okay guy to have around, but certainly not a guy that can be climbing the totem pole as far as high leverage situation. And then Carlos Hernandez, sort of in the same boat there, although he's been even worse than Banks, no doubt about it. Now, to get into a couple of these stats for the bullpen as a whole, I do want to lay it out here. To start off with, as it stands, the Phillies' 5.81 ERA is the second worst among all MLB bullpens. Here are some other relevant numbers. They have 6 blown saves, which is the worst in the MLB, a 58.3% save percentage, which is tied for 23rd, 47 runs allowed, also tied for 23rd, 80 hits allowed, which is tied for 22nd, a 1.55 whip, which is 25th, a 290 opponent batting average, ranks 30th, 355 opponent on base percentage, ranks 25th, a 496 opponent slugging percentage, that is 30th in the MLB, 850 opponent OPS, that is 29th. There are 18 inherent runners, which is tied for the second fewest, and then 33.3 inherent runner scoring percentage, tied for 14th. None of these numbers are good enough here, and that is what we are seeing. So in regards to the hierarchy of what the problems with this Phillies team are, I think we all had a little bit penciled next to bullpen coming into the season. This is especially the case after a guy like Jeff Hoffman was so excellent there and then did walk. I still have a hard time fully, I guess, figuring out how to feel about that. And I think, honestly, the takeaway will be if we get halfway through the season and Jeff Hoffman's arm blows up or he goes down with an injury, that the Phillies will look right in that situation. There are the Orioles and the Braves both checked in on Hoffman and were concerned by the medicals as well. So I don't hold that one that specifically against this Phillies team, but he's been excellent on the mound for the Blue Jays this year, and there's no way around that. Carlos Estevez also pitching very well this season, and that was a guy that this team went out and got at the trade deadline, and while he wasn't, locked down excellent, a clear-cut closer in the way that I think myself and a lot of people hoped, he was fine in this bullpen, and there's no argument that they got worse since this point. Now, if we want to view this through an optimistic lens, and we know that it is a marathon, the baseball season, to compare it year by year, it is not that different. That's some brief Phillies bullpen history. Shout out to John Stolness here. In April of last year, the Phillies bullpen had an ERA of 5.42, the third worst in baseball. In May, the bullpen ERA went from 5.42 to an MLB best 2.13. So yeah, maybe moving Andrew Painter to the pen is a bit premature. And I don't want to get into the Andrew Painter conversation because I do think that is a guy that they need to handle with whatever is in the best interest of Andrew Painter. That is a long-term bright future for this specific player, and he cannot be brought up as a fix to a problem. You bring him up when he is ready, when he's ready to be a foundational piece, when he can grow into his fullest potential as a player, not a guy that should be a stopgap in the bullpen by any means. And we'll see ultimately when he is called to the majors, because it does seem like it's happening this year. Now, When talking about this bullpen as a whole, what I think is different about this specific season is it does feel like the weight of the world is falling on their top arms a little bit more so. A game like that Saturday matchup, the one that they did ultimately win 11-10, when you can't burn through your lower leverage guys, when you have a 7-run lead, that's a problem there. The fact that Jose Alvarado had to pitch in that game is embarrassing from the Phillies' perspective. Shout out to Jose that he did get the job done. But what my fear is, and what the pathway that I see them currently heading down, is there's just going to be so much strain on the Matt Stroms, the Orion Kirkrings, the Jose Alvarados, because they need them to get outs just about every single night at this point. There aren't enough arms that you can be comfortable in it and roll out on a night by night. And you're kind of doing the dance if you're Rob Thomson right now. Do we take the loss on this game, or do we just roll through the guys that we do know work? That's a problem from an organizational standpoint, and that's something that does need to be fixed. I kind of approached this season thinking that there would be maybe one more arm that they needed at the deadline. I think that number might be higher than I hoped or realized would be the case there. Now, you can get bullpen arms at the deadline. There's no doubt about it. Those are one of the more frequently traded players, or particularly, teams that will be sellers that are out of the playoff race, all that conversation. But what I do think the Phillies have sort of miscalculated this year, they've done a very nice job striking within the margins in years past. Finding a guy like Jeff Hoffman, who has bounced around, has not found his footing at the MLB level, has really had some struggles and then found something. That works great. When you execute that, it's a problem when you don't. And that's what I think we're seeing with Jordan Romano right now, that he is a guy who has had the pedigree as a very good pitcher, that he has had some high moments, some very impressive performances in seasons at the MLB level, but the arm does look to be cooked, and I don't think that's something that you just get back. He had a really bad season for the Blue Jays last year. The hope was, from the Phillies' perspective, this could be a buy low type of situation. You give him a 1-year deal, he earns it and proves that he is ready to make a return to being a legitimate high-level closer. I do think those days are gone. And for Romano specifically here, I guess I commend him for this. He basically stood there after the game yesterday and was like, what was the problem? Or after the 6-run outing that he did allow the day before. Like, was it an execution thing? Is your stuff not there? What is it? And he looked right back at reporters and said, the most frustrating thing about it for me is I did execute the way I wanted. I did throw the pitches the way I wanted. I wanted to go in hard with the fastball, wanted to use the slider as my get-out pitch, and they just clobbered it. And that's exactly what happened. But with that being the case, and while I respect him kind of taking it on the chin there, if you're the Phillies, you can't listen to that. You can't watch how he looked on the field and talk yourself into this getting much better over the course of the season. And by the way, the velocity for Romano has improved since the start of the year, that he is throwing harder, and the results have been worse. So I'm full out on the Jordan Romano experience. I do think that there needs to be a replacement with that. And I do think Dave Dombrowski has to get cooking pretty easy. And I also think was really frustrating to me, I'm seeing Rob Thomson trying to build these guys up. That he is doing a fairly decent job of putting them in low leverage situations where you can start to build back that confidence. And they're still getting clobbered, man, which is more telling about the arms just straight up not being good enough. Now, to set the stage a little bit more with the bullpen, this article continues in shout out to Crossing Broad. This was a Kevin Kincaid article, but our guy Luke Arcani writes for them as well. Individually, certainly Romano's numbers bring the group down. Among all relievers who've thrown at least 5 innings, his 15.26 ERA is tied for the 6th worst. Batters are hitting .382 against him and getting on base at a .462 clip. He's not walking a ton of guys, just 4 over 7.2 innings, but they're putting the ball in play and sometimes out of play over the fence 3 times so far. Hernandez is a 9.0 ERA on 7 innings. Similar story to Romano. He's just giving up a lot of hits and letting runners on, although he's walked 6 and his on-base percentage is almost as bad as Romano's. From there, it's a whole lot of meh from Joe Ross and Jose Ruiz, while Kirkring is the 4th best with a 4.50 ERA. Tanner Banks, Jose Alvarado, and Matt Strom are the only guys with an ERA of 3.0 or lower. If you use the same innings filter, 5 or more thrown, Strom's 1.74 ERA will be the 69th best in Major League Baseball through Easter Sunday. And again, I'm not worried about Strom whatsoever. I still believe in Kirkring, even though I think he's going to be lumped up a little bit more than I expected to be the case in the early part of this. But perhaps what puts it fully on display is a stat like this. The Phillies starting pitchers lead MLB with 10 quality starts, while the bullpen leads baseball in blown save. That is tough times, and that is impossible to win as an organization. I do think these starting, and there have been exceptions to this, Aaron Nola, as he prepares to take on the Mets when I'm recording this, he's had a tough start to the season, 0 for 4. Zack Wheeler, we haven't seen perform to his peak level just yet, but guys like Luzardo have been really solid. Taijuan Walker giving us a little something. Taijuan Walker walked out of that game after 4 innings. putting the team in a position to win. These starters are, for the most part, doing their job, and it is very clearly the bullpen not holding their end up of the bargain. So I do think there needs to be some changes within this Phillies team. It is a little bit more pressing and more notable than I expected to be the case at this stage in the season, but a long grind of baseball season. There is no new face walking into that bullpen right now. So these guys are going to have to gut it out and figure something out in the coming weeks. If not, I do think replacements are coming. So do want to hear from you guys in the comments. Is your panic level as high as mine? Do you think we officially have a bullpen problem here in Philadelphia? Because I do think that is the case. Once again, appreciate each and every one of you guys for tuning into this video here. Do want to remind you guys, as always, make sure you are hitting that subscribe button. That only 33.9% of you guys watching these videos have subscribed to us here at Phillies Digest just yet. So make sure you're hitting that button, dropping a like on this video. I'll be back talking with you next time. Peace.